Good evening, everyone. It's Spunkify here on behalf of MMOBomb.com, and welcome back to the Free Play Podcast. This is episode 84, starting on September 15th, 2013. We've got a lot of great news to cover tonight. We have the polarization of free play expansions, starting with a discussion regarding Lord of the Rings Online has a new expansion, but you have to pay for it. So I wanted to kind of get an opinion of you guys and of our fellow co-hosts, which we'll get to in just a second, as to whether or not that in the end equals pay to win or equals just not free to play. Also, we've got FireFall shutting down all of its PvP. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means for the MMO FPS and whether that is something that should just happen permanently and they should never reopen it. We've also got Hi-Rez again in the news once more, this time trying to remain relevant, trying to talk a little bit about Smite's future and the fact that it won't go the way of Tribes of Sand and Global Agenda. And then finally we have Tom Clancy yet again having a game with Ubisoft, this time called In War. It's a browser-based RTS, and we'll talk a little bit about that and whether browser-based games are indeed now relevant in the terms of what is good and what is bad in the free-play space. So to start off this wonderful podcast, I have to, of course, introduce my co-host. We have the, as usual, Jason Winter. Glad to have you back on the show, Jason. How has your weekend been?
I was doing great until my Vikings lost.
The Vikings. Yeah. You know, when I moved to California, I just stopped caring about football. I don't know what it was. There was like a disconnect, and suddenly there was no interest. I came from Oklahoma. That's like football capital, you know?
It's Adrian Peterson land, yeah.
I know. I was rooting for him. Now, our second co-host, you may have thought he'd be Kevin, because it's been Kevin for quite some time. But in fact, it is not Kevin. It is someone that you've experienced if you do watch our content regularly on MMOBomb's YouTube channel. There we go. And she goes by the name of Squid.
Hello.
Hello, Squid. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Squid, if you don't know, she did a couple of stand-ins for the Free to Play Weekly. I'm glad to have her in there as we were transitioning between hosts. And she happens to be my wife. So, Squid, Spunkify, the two S's. We've got Jason Winter here. Jason, what name do you go in-game by?
Depends on the game.
Do you have any game that you go by an S name?
An S name.
Because we could be the triple S's, you know?
It'd be better than two S's, because that kind of symbolizes something else now.
Yeah, that's true.
You guys are married, so it's more like a thing. You're S and S. That's so cute. I'm J. Just different.
You're J? S and J? S and JS? I don't know.
S&J, well,
that sounds like some kind of like a clothing store.
As long as my name doesn't begin with M.
Yeah. All right. Squid, as a usual ritual we have with all new hosts here on the Free to Play Podcast, I have to ask you, what is the MMO or indeed like real online game that got you into free to play?
It'd have to be Neopets.
Neopets? That is one that we haven't had on the show. We've got WoW, Lord of the Rings, I think RuneScape, but never Neopets. What captivated
1999, go way back when like Blink-182 came out. And all those punk bands were the rage, and I was really into Neopets as a awkward middle schooler.
Now, express to us how much, because I know we have fans in here that have like old school Neopet hardcore people. Express how hardcore you've been in Neopets in the past.
I would categorize every item. Like, I'd write down my item in a notebook and keep track of everything so I can keep track of the prices and what its worth was, and how much I had if I needed to look at something really quick, because I didn't want to go all the way back to my inventory to go look. It'd be quicker to like look at my notebook. And so I had a notebook that had all my Neopets information in it that I would constantly write in.
What did you have then in Neopets that like signified you were like, what was the Neopet equivalent of a badass? Like, how did you know someone was a badass in Neopets?
They had like a huge collection of like negs and like a huge collection of potions, like especially like the transforming potions.
And
or
you
paintbrushes.
Had those?
If you had a lot of paintbrushes, yeah, I definitely had like the collections.
Weren't you like ranked number 1 or like in the top ranking of something for a while? Like what? I remember you telling me a story once about that.
Oh yeah, I had like I ranked in this because that was still during like dial-up time, and so there'd be flash-based games, and my game.
Some of the people here don't even know what dial-up. Oh, okay, that's selling them a little short. They probably know what dial-up is, but they never experienced dial-up.
So if you played a flash game with dial-up, the whole game would slow down. So you could really calculate your moves when everything was in slow-mo. And And so I would just be top player in these games because I would just have that advantage, or just play the game in slow mo.
It's been that's how old school someone is. When there was a time in gaming when you played an online game and you actually lagged, it was beneficial.
Yeah, it was.
It was beneficial to lag because you didn't jitter around. You just oh, everything's slow mo for you. Okay, much easier. Well, yeah, Neopets, and then from there, didn't you move on to some other well-known games?
Yeah, I played like Age of Empires, and I played a little bit of StarCraft, but not too much. And
Ragnarok Online, I believe.
Ragnarok a little bit.
Yeah. And then most recently, you played Guild Wars 2 with me.
Yes.
And then you played Card Hunter. You've been playing Card Hunter with me as well. We're both sort of enjoying that. So you have a very colorful history. I know you're really into old school SNES games as well, Ninja Turtles in Time. So you've got some cred behind you. It's glad to have an actual, legitimate female gamer on the show, I guess you could say. So female. I know you hate that woman, girl.
I didn't know I'm not a girl. This is the internet.
I'm pretty sure I've seen your face. So unless you put on a really convincing makeup, Jason, which I would have to give you credit for, because
with the beard and everything.
Yeah, that's a pretty. I would think that you weren't actually wearing makeup. You were instead taking some pills. If that was the case.
I was in the circus. Actually, I was the bearded lady.
You were the bearded lady. Well, you made a pretty good looking bearded lady, I have to say then.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so first news topic of this week is dealing with the polarization of free-to-play expansions, which is a very fancy title for basically saying the more expansions that you have to purchase for a free-to-play game, does it really make it free-to-play at that point? And the reason this got me thinking about this is because, of course, Lord of the Rings Online is being released this week. Not the MMO, the expansion, Helm's Deep, is being released for the Lord of the Rings Online. Their next expansion, a lot of people are excited for it. But like all of their previous expansions, it is a purchased expansion. And this got me thinking, because a lot of the comments brought up good points of the fact that at what point do these free-to-play MMOs no longer become free-to-play? And I'm doing air quotes, so just imagine me doing air quotes right now. And it's sort of true. We have DC Universe Online, Dungeons & Dragons Online, SOTOR, and of course Lord of the Rings Online. All these MMOs, they have a varying degree. Most of them let you go to the in-game, what they would consider a normal in-game. I know DC Universe Online does. But then they sort of just say, well, they kind of take you to a carnival and then say, look at all these fancy rides. Now that you're at the carnival, purchase the ability to ride said rides. And you're just kind of like, oh, I have all these cool things around me, but I can't participate in it. So it's not a big deal really when there's only one or two expansions, maybe $10 here or there. If you're not spending money on cosmetic, it's not that big of a purchase. But if you're trying to get into an MMO that has already had a history of adding expansions, it can be very daunting, because I know sometimes they have packs and stuff like that, but still, that's a lot of content that you kind of feel like you're wasting because you're just sort of power leveling. I mean, depending on the player, some players will play it for lore, but a lot of people will just power through that to get to the the new end game, if you will. So I was kind of curious, Jason and Squid, what your opinions were on this. If you felt that it did hold true a little bit, that these MMOs are sort of starting to sway away from totally free-to-play or free-to-play as we have now come to expect it.
Well, it is. I mean, it is a more recent thing, I think, that we have come to the notion of games that are totally free-to-play. Stuff like League of Legends, World of Tanks, stuff where you can basically do just about anything, and it's only about paying money for advancement speed. PlanetSide 2 is another one. Whereas, whereas you look at Lord of the Rings Online and DDO, Dungeons and Dragons Online, they were Turbine sort of pioneered the free-to-play market in North America for the most part, and they kind of used an olderish model. They weren't going to be quite as free as some of these more recent games, and like that sort of thing that people are more used to a bit more. So certainly when they went that way originally, I thought, okay, fine, I'll play for free, or buy some points here and there, and then once every year and a half, I might have to spend $40 on an expansion. And that seems okay to me. You're still only spending $40. Maybe you're spending 50 or 60 if you buy some points in between. So if it's $60 a year to play, I guess I don't have a problem with that. It really is just it's another form of the paywall, which was, like I said, a more common thing that you would have back then. I mean, they still have that, where if you you can play I think when it originally came out, it was like level 20 or 25. You can do quests up to that zone or whatever. Maybe they changed it. I haven't looked that closely at it. After that, you could still keep playing. You could still level all the way to max level, but you would have had to like grind out, mobs.
Yeah,
There were
it
no
would be like
quests
an
for them.
unconventional way.
Yeah, it'd be virtually impossible. You wouldn't want to do it. So that's how it always was. I mean, that's how Lotro always was. Where once you got to that certain point, you were gonna have to pay something to get the quest packs, the region packs, whatever. And they've put the old expansions on sale to make it a little easier to get those. In fact, they had a $40 sale for all the expansions, previous expansions going on, and like just as of yesterday when I looked it up, it was actually $20. So that's a good way to go. Maybe that's still in effect as of right now.
You bring
Yep.
up a good point when you talk about like, having only pay $60 a year, because that just equals out like one buy to play game, and that is true over the course of 12 months. That's only $5 a month.
Yeah.
Certainly not a lot. But you have games like DC Universe Online, for example, and to a lesser degree, SOTOR, but those games have a lot of quick updates. DC Universe Online specifically, that ask for $10, $15 here and there. It's much more of a, I guess you could say penny pinching sort of model when it's scrutinized down to a smaller sort of development cycle. But the catch-22 is if you go the Lotro route and you release one expansion almost every 6 months to maybe a year.
It's been about a year apart the last couple of ones. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so a bit about a year apart from each of them. Because I don't exactly remember when Riders of Rohan, which was the one before
Like
that.
early October last year.
Okay, so
That's what's coming out in November. So.
yeah. So roughly like 11, 10 months, right around there. So with that sort of discrepancy, it's a lot less of a burden. But then when you have something where I think DC Universe Online has already released 2, maybe 3 expansion things this year, and and each of them $15 a pop. It could equal out to 60, but I think that it actually feels like more when players actually opt to pay that consistently to unlock the next raid. And then you have the flip side of that, which is Rift, which recently went free to play. It had a a purchasable expansion and a subscription, and it just dealt away with all of that and brought itself up to current, I would say, quote-unquote, free-to-play standards when it comes to MMOs. What about you, Squid? We've played a couple of MMOs together. We've played EVE Online, which is a pay-to-play MMO but offers free expansions. And then we played Guild Wars 2.
It's the same.
It's the same, but without the pay-to-play element. You just purchase the game, and then you get all the free content.
I have a hard time understanding how a game could consider itself free to play, but also say hey, yeah, you have to pay for this expansion if you want to play this section. That kind of voids the whole free to play model when you're excluding actual free players from the paying players.
And I think that would be an argument that would be made now, but I think because these games were sort of like some of the earlier adopters of free to play, and all the ones we've mentioned converted from a pay to play model of some sort. They sort of been grandfathered in, if you will. And with the grandfathering in, people are like, yeah, they're free to play, but kind of not free to play. And to me, I'm kind of like, I feel like they're sort of missing out on a wider audience, especially I think DC Universe Online, Lotro, SOTOR, yeah.
Yeah, I see how these games would have a huge fan base, but it'd be hard to get new people to play it because there's such a big investment up front.
Exactly. And so I'm wondering at what point it would just be more advantageous for them to completely say, yeah, all the expansions are now free. Where is that? Obviously, they must still be making enough off of the expansion packs to continue this type of model. Otherwise, they would have converted a while ago. But Jason, are you going to be purchasing the Lord of the Rings Online Helm's Deep expansion? Because I know you're a big Lotro fan.
Well, that's a kind of a tricky question. I probably won't be buying it because they'll probably set me up with it for free, which they've done for the last 4 expansions. But if I didn't have that, I probably wouldn't because I haven't been playing Lotro a whole lot lately. So I would probably be the kind of person who would wait until it goes on sale a while later. However, as of before about 2 years ago when I was really into the game and they were putting out expansions, I absolutely would have bought them because I just needed to because it was my main game. It was it'd be like buying a WoW expansion, Pandaria or Cataclysm, whatever comes out, I have to buy it. I just have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now talking about your general point before though, I think there are two types of ways that companies look at free-to-play games. One is as of the kind of, let's get as many people in as we can and make as much of it free as possible and, charge them for whatever along the way. Make as much of the game available and get as many people as possible. But I think, like you talk about the Lotro way and the old way that you guys used to do it, that they used to do it, some of them almost see it as more of like an extended free trial. Whereas, you can play up to, like I said, like level 20, 25. If you like what you got, then you have to pay for it, and you basically have to pay to get in to do more. If not, you just play it for free for a little while and you go away. I know DDO and Lotro each had, I think, like 10-day free trials before they were free to play, so it's kind of almost in that same model.
What if you don't, I don't know, what is the max level in the Lord of the Rings Online is 90, correct?
85 right now.
But it will be 90.
Go to 95.
95, okay. If we make a direct comparison to, say, the free trial for World of Warcraft, that actually markets itself as a free trial. It doesn't market itself as free-to-play WoW. Mm-hmm. And it allows players to play in limited amount of time with most of the classes. And I think they actually updated it so you could actually try out the new races and classes. I'm not for sure. I know Death Knight, but the other ones for up to level 20. And at that point, you'd have to pay to actually play. Now, the level cap on right now on WoW is 90. So that means there's a 70 level discrepancy between where you can go and where the end game is. By comparison, Lord of the Rings Online, I think you can play up to level 30 before you have to purchase an expansion.
I think they might have upped it at least that far, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So level 30, and then the actual in-game is 95.
Well, no, actually, the expansion goes to 50. That was the original max.
Okay.
But in terms of effectively not having to just grind mobs, it probably is around like 25, 30.
Yeah, so you start losing quests at about 30, correct?
Sure.
Okay, so you say effectively level 30. So by comparison, they're almost the same in terms of the discrepancy in levels. You're dealing with a 65 to 70 level discrepancy, one game being marketed as free-to-play, and the other game being marketed as a free trial. If you just, obviously, they're two different games, they're two different models, there's a lot of difference between the two MMOs, but if you just look at it from the perspective of an MMO that has a an expansion-based way of adding content, and then having people pay for that, the two have a very similar free-to-play model, although it's marketed differently. So it's something to sort of consider, and I would hope developers of Lotro and D&D Online and everything, I would hope as time goes on, sooner rather than later, they would look into maybe converting that, or at least making it so that all the expansions up until like the newest expansion, for example, would be free to play. Because then you still get the people that pay for the expansion, but new players don't feel like they're going to have to pay through all of these expansions to get caught up. Something to consider, developers, if you happen to be listening to this small little segment on MMOBombs.
As they always do.
Everybody listens to us, right?
Everybody. Yeah. You know what's funny or crazy is the fact that I whenever I go to PAX events and stuff like that, I'm like, who knows of MMOBomb? We're just some little free-to-play channel / website, and apparently we get around. We're a talk amongst circles of people. I don't know how that works, but
I want to hear this talk.
I do too. They tell me the talk, but then they don't explain where the talk originates from. So they may just be making it up to make me feel better.
That sounds like when you talk to someone, it's like, yeah, I write for MMOBomb. Oh, MMOBomb. Oh, yeah, we know, we love that. We all read that. Oh, yeah.
I've actually read what SOE had to say about MMOBomb, and it was quite positive.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they're like little marketing booklets, but I can't say out loud what it said. But yes, it was quite the I guess the shining of the boots, or whatever you want to call it. Like, it was an ego booster, if you will. So there's that to look forward to. SOE likes us. But our next article is going to deal with FireFall, Red 5's MMO FPS, and the fact that it's shutting down, or I should say Red 5 is shutting down FireFall's PvP. All of it. Completely. All together. One big fail swoop. It's gone. Poof. I've never known a game to remove half of it. Like, I've never known a game just to be like, you know that? Like, half of our game, it doesn't exist. It's gone.
It's really only 3% of it.
I've been kind of following FireFall's news over the years, and it seems like every few months they're just like, hey, you know that thing about our game? Scrap it. We're starting over. And they just completely do that over and over and over again throughout the years now.
Because they've changed their skill system like twice already. And, yeah.
But every time they're like, oh, we got it right this time. Here it is. This is a new skill system. It's totally badass. And then like 6 months later, they're like, oh, you know that old skill system? It was trash. Here's the new one. That's exactly how it is. So like they just bash it as they move on. What I don't understand is like they invested so much into the PvP. They hire.
I don't know where all this money is coming from. They're just like hemorrhaging money constantly.
They're owned by who are they owned by? They got bought by I think a Chinese company.
And they're still in beta, which is blowing my mind.
Well, they're taking your money and there are no rollbacks, so it's kind of like not beta.
Yeah, we've sort of have a thing now, Squid on MMOBomb, where if a developer is taking your money in open beta, it's release. Like we're gonna leave it release.
But they keep saying it's beta.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Well, I mean,
so is Smite.
Hearthstone is in closed beta, and they can take your money.
Oh, yeah.
There's that. So, and then there's games that have been in alpha and can take your money. I've seen that as well. So it's all arbitrary.
Pushing that limit as far as they can.
Yeah. So dealing with FireFall, they're removing the PvP because they say only 3% of people actually play it. Which, really, to me, is it because the PvP sucks so bad? Or is it because they just can't, like, figure out what the focus of FireFall is? It just, I cannot, they've spent so much money on it. They've made a sort of esports shoutcasting thing, which allows you to like, watch games and spectate. They employ, still employed, an esports manager named Morgan Romine. I've actually met her, really nice individual. Hopefully I didn't butcher your last name, Romine. She's still currently employed there as the esports manager, and I'm kind of just thinking, like, is she like updating her resume? Like, what's happening? Like, you kind of have to have PvP to have esports. So what is your? I guess she maybe can help out with like the development of the new PvP because they said they want to bring it back. They want to retool it, which means they're scrapping it. And I'm just kind of curious, like, where people thought it like missed the mark. Obviously, one of the things that I think they missed the mark in is the fact that all the PvP currently in the game is session based. So you queue up and then you go to an area which looks very similar to the real area that you can visit in the real world, but it is in a sort of enclosed environment and you partake in like 10v10 PvP, that kind of style things. And they have different modes and they've been adding modes and doing all this stuff to sort of promote it. And it just wasn't sticking. Everything they were throwing at the wall wasn't sticking. So I thought, why didn't they just add open world PvP? And that's something I think they've talked about, but they said it's tricky. And I can understand that, but why didn't they just think about that in the first place? It kind of is like a no-brainer to have an MMO FPS that's open world, that's PvE focused, but also has like dynamic open world PvP.
It just sounds like they wanted everything, and but didn't think about what they wanted. They just wanted everything, and now that they have everything, they're like, well, that thing sucked, so let's redo everything.
So, but that just thought made me think of like a 2-year-old who's like, I want everything. Like you just show them toys, and they're like, "Which one do you want?" And they're like, "Everything."
They're like, "We want to be an esport. We want PvE. We want PvP. We want all these things." And you're just like, "How are you doing it?" And they're like, "Well, we didn't really think that step. That's why we're retooling everything constantly."
Yeah, I think I was talking with a friend the other day and said they almost sound a little like a mini 38 Studios, who were trying to apparently shove everything into Copernicus, and then they just blew up. So you hope that they're at least seeing what they're doing wrong and what they are doing too much of and are trying to scale back before the whole thing goes belly up.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that ship from. Have you ever seen the FireFall like CGI trailer where it's like the ship's like going down the arc light or whatever? It's like crashing down into South America. It's this giant ship, and it just makes me think like as a like, comparison, that ship is actually Red 5, like the company, and this ship is just like, he's like, we need to boost it, we got to get it away because it's just going to crash into the earth. And then finally they're like trying so hard, and then they just realize it's gonna hit and it's gonna explode and terrible things are gonna happen. And it's sort of headed that way. I mean, they had all this really good hype about a year or 2 years ago at PAX, and it's kind of died down. There's not really much of a presence of FireFall anymore at these events. And in terms of the actual PvE content, which they seem to want to focus on right now, they haven't really been adding that much. I mean, they've been sort of opening up new areas, but it's still within the same area. Like, you're still in that sort of Copacabana, area next to the ocean, and
that Mediterranean environment.
Yeah,
still exists.
Yeah, they just kind of, well, I mean, because of science and stuff, it exists. Like, that's why it exists now, but they haven't really opened up any new continents or zones, if you will. They've kind of just expanded upon the original zone, which is fine and dandy. New content's always great, but I think people are a little bit tired of being in that one area for 2 years. Yeah, I know I would be.
Yeah, and I think, especially now if you're going to concentrate on PvE, and look at most games that are, PvE focused, and they have pretty large, expansive worlds, a lot of different zones, different environments, and so on. Now, obviously, in FireFall, they have that, the purple stuff you're supposed to push back. I forget what it's called.
Melding,
that's it. So, yeah, so they can't, I understand they have that there, so it's not just, a big, huge, go everywhere, do everything world, but you think they have to at least expand on that and make for a larger area for you to play around in so that you don't feel so compressed into one area.
They just seem like they have a lot on their plate, and they're trying to bite off everything at once. And they're the 2-year-old.
It just seems like there's no end goal. Like, I don't see where they're heading at all.
They sort of have like a plan in phases that you can look at on the website. There's like 3 phases, and they basically outline that this is how we're going to release each sort of zone. We release the zone. It starts off small. People complete the missions, which expand the zone, and you go to take back the melding area, fight off the Chosen, then you've completed the zone, you've sort of established it, and then you can move on to the next zone, but you'll have to go back to the previous zones in order to fend off, Chosen attacks, otherwise the zone may become unavailable. That's how they outlined it. Now, whether or not they actually can get to that point, that's like another discussion, because we're still on the first zone, and we've been on the first zone for 2 years.
So it's like when I was talking with the Hi-Rez guys at QuakeCon last month, we kind of made fun of Smite for the same thing as, hey, it's been beta forever. And I asked them, what do you need to make it actually launch? And he talked about, refinement and iteration and so on. And that'd be my question for here, or 5. What do you guys need to launch FireFall? And I don't know what that is. It's like, what are they waiting for?
They need more content.
Yeah, well, that's what I like to hear from them. They need more content. They need to make sure their skills work, or do they need better PvP?
I would honestly think that, like, if they had focused on just opening up the world more and then change things like the PvP or the how you level up as they open up the world more, I think people would be like less mad, less angry. But the fact that it's still very constrictive, and then they have all these rapid changes that doesn't really on the surface seem to add much to the game, because it doesn't physically or visibly add anything to what you see other than changing what you already know. I think that would have definitely helped them at least ease into the changes and have like the support of their community, more so than what they currently have. So Red 5 in a little bit of trouble, but you were speaking of Hi-Rez, Jason, and that actually just ties right into our next article, dealing with Hi-Rez trying to calm the turbulent waters that they, like a little kid in a bathtub, so furiously thrashed about to make when they decided to shut down their forums and stop development on Tribes Ascend, and kinda, but not spy on people with their software. Kinda. It's a little gray area there, whether or not that was technically legal. According to them, it was legal. According to some other people, it was intrusive. But so yeah, they've had a little bit of a spotted last few months, if you will. It hasn't been clean and spiffy, if you will. They went to forums. They went to Reddit, not the forums, because the forums don't exist.
Reddit is their forum.
Reddit is their forum, which is funny because the Smite forum or the Tribes forum, I forget which one, apparently hates the company. There's a lot of comments all the time about how much one of those actual subreddits really despises Hi-Rez, which I think is so ironic. But they went to the Smite forums, specifically the CEO of Smite, not Smite, sorry, Hi-Rez. They make Smite. went to the forums, and he basically went there to explain why they stopped developing for Global Agenda and for Tribes Ascend, and what would happen to Smite. And basically calm players down to say, no, this will not happen to Smite, and sort of explain why so. So the guy's name was Erez Gorin, and he posted basically saying that Tribes Ascend, Global Agenda, combined cost about $40 million. About $30 million of that was apparently his. Of those two games, neither of them were popular, despite them adding in content regularly, he says. So they chose to move on to Smite, which is sort of a rare egg, a rare golden goose. That's not actually a golden goose, it's a goose that lays golden eggs. It'd be cool if it was a golden goose, though. Interesting color. But yeah, so Smite's rare in that it's growing. There's a lot of people, coming to play it. It just got picked up by Tencent, which of course publishes League of Legends. So that was a really big thing too. And then the actual amount of developers on it have grown from about 15 to 80 people. So it is doing well. And he says for that reason, no one should worry about Smite, right? Because of the fact that it's doing well right now, it means it'll always do well, right?
Everything that Hi-Rez says, everything that company says, I treat it as if it's a politician speaking. And you cannot believe anything that they're going to say. Because their actions have proved otherwise repeatedly.
But here's where you can believe a politician. If he says there are 3 things, 2 of them don't make money and 1 of them does, so we're going to keep doing the one that does, that's when you can believe the politician.
Yeah.
Until it stops making money.
Well, sure, until it stops making money. But until then, it at least makes it easier to understand why they're doing what they're doing.
So the fan base has to hope that Smite never loses steam. Ever. Ever.
Because if it does...
it will be dropped like a hot potato immediately.
So it's funny that you mentioned the politician comparison, because they go against their own statement. And I was like, did they just do this? And I had to check to make sure. But specifically dealing with Tribes Ascend, earlier Todd Harris, who also is like the co-CEO or COO, I forget exactly his title, but he's high up there for Hi-Rez Studios. He mentioned that, we're looking into, he was in an interview with Rock Paper Shotgun, another great website that you should check out if you're interested in all things gaming, because they write awesome articles. Just as a little plug to you guys, RPS, feel free to plug MMOBomb whenever you choose. But they got to talk to Todd Harris, and Todd specifically spoke about how they are working towards adding in community features to allow mods so players can make their own maps, and potentially add in other features later on. And that was what they were working towards with Tribes Ascend. It was like a definitive thing, as if how Todd spoke about it. Well, this was back in July 17th this year. So not more than 2-3 months later, we're basically 2 months later. We have Goran here. I almost said Goran, but Goran here. He's basically saying that no, it will not happen. There are not going to be these community mod support tools because it is not in their budget or timeline, or not in their infrastructure capabilities to do so, and they don't want to spend the costs. They don't want to spend what it will cost to implement those things. So, right there in their own statement, they contradicted themselves. But they made it seem as though the community was the only ones that were behind this, not like your second runner up in terms of the highest person in a company didn't just agree to something in an official sort of interview. I mean, was that off the record? What was that? I don't know.
They would like it to be off the record.
They made a lot of stuff off the record when they deleted the forums. Because in this research, when I was writing this piece, I wanted to go find a bunch of links that the Rock Paper Shotgun article and other articles were referencing, and they all were referencing forum links that no longer exist. So I couldn't even dig any deeper, and it was kind of smart, but diabolical.
It's a clever move.
That's why they deleted the forums, because they knew that the Todd Harris's thing about doing the tools was on there.
Yeah, but see, they can't delete a Rock Paper Shotgun article.
Well, sure.
So the one sort of thing I imagine them doing in the future is they're going to be like, oh, hey, we're bringing back the forums. Don't you like us now? But then you got to realize none of the old stuff will be on the forums. So they'll bring the forums back, None of the old stuff will be there, so nobody can search or find that stuff. And then everybody's happy because the forums are back. See, I know where they're going with this. I see this.
You're a diabolical CEO.
Yeah, they're in this for the long con. This is a long con right here. All right. Well, apparently Hi-Rez hates us now. So no, they don't actually hate us.
We don't want to see the notebook on them.
Yeah,
yes,
we don't know.
Notebook. They love us. Hi-Rez.
Yeah, I don't know, but there's some legitimate things, and I'm not going to let that stuff just pass by and not mention it. So Hi-Rez, come on, let's kind of own up to. If you want to be treated like with respect and want your transparency to feel serious, just back it up with actual actions. That's what you got to do. It's just the plain and simple. I like Smite. I like how it is as a third-person MOBA. You got that market cornered. I give it to you. But come on. Let's work on the other areas. All right, so the last little article we're going to talk about today or tonight is Ubisoft announcing a new RTS based on another Tom Clancy series, who would have guessed, called N-War, which to me, N-War sounds a little bit like a Twitter hashtag. Like some 15, 16-year-olds like, this war is so stupid, hashtag N-War. And then they just like send it out to everyone. That's what it makes me like, yeah, so N-War.
Just a real quick trivia search, or Twitter search, there is an @N-War on Libya.
Really?
Yes.
There we go. It'd be hilarious if people
There is an
like,
end war with like underscores around it too, which is a, make peace, not war kind of account.
Yeah, but it's true. It totally reminded me of that. So Tom Clancy's N-War. First of all, in the spirit of all Ubisoft, it seems like every free-to-play Ubisoft game is a spin-off of a previous Ubisoft series. There's Anno Online, there's Ghost Recon Online, and in this case, there is N-War, which is based on a 2008 RTS that was released on the Xbox and on PC, and I believe on PlayStation 3 as well. Didn't get too good of ratings, but it's back now in browser form, and it is an actual browser-based RTS. So while we didn't quite get a one-to-one replacement for losing Homeworld Shipbreakers, which I was really looking forward to as a free-to-play RTS, we did get something in place that looks like an RTS. It doesn't look terrible. The graphics are pretty decent for a browser-based game, and there's a lot of heroes. Over 80 hero units, which level up and they have their own abilities. Kind of sounds a little bit like a MOBA, but apparently it's an RTS. So maybe an RTS with MOBA elements? Wait, isn't there already one of those? What was it called?
Eventually, someday, maybe.
End of Nations? Is that you? It's kind of like End of Nations in the sense that they have similar descriptions, but we don't actually know if they're similar. So
and it's funny too if you look at the screenshots on their site. A lot of them are you see like cities with roads going all over the place. They look they look more RTS, like just random stuff going wherever. And they've got one map that's like in a snowy area, and it totally has 3 lanes.
Oh, it does?
It looks exactly like a MOBA map.
Oh man. Maybe they're going for the RTS with MOBA elements, as in like, it's a normal RTS, but then we also happen to have a MOBA, kind of like how Soldier Front 2 had a MOBA mode, but it was an FPS.
Yeah, maybe this is just the one map that's like that, and everything else is more wide open.
Yeah. Well,
RTS.
who knows? Who really knows? But I mean, there's going to be PvE and PvP missions, so there's something for everybody. But I noticed a lot of people were sort of being critical of it, just recently in general, critical of browser-based games, whether they be 3D or 2D, just for the fact that they were browser-based. And while there isn't a lot of information about Tom Clancy's N-War, there's enough in terms of gameplay footage and screenshots that I wouldn't automatically write it off as a terrible game. It looks different enough to sort of catch my interest. Whether the gameplay is good, that's a whole other thing, but that's something we have to find out about. I've noticed though that a lot of like gamers now sort of, how there's a stigma against free to play? Well, the stigma against browser games seems to be growing despite the fact that browser games are getting better. And I don't know if that's because client-based games are also getting better, and the gap is sort of widening in terms of what client-based games are capable of and what people are pushing for free-to-play games and client. But I've had a lot of sort of critique in criticism, especially against 2D browser games, ones like Card Hunter or any of the card games really, Hearthstone for example, to the point where it kind of makes me think, are these games sort of like getting sold short just for the fact that they're browser based, or are they actually getting a large enough audience that it doesn't even matter? I mean, what do you guys think? Am I just sort of like imagining things, or does it seem like people are consistently just like not letting the fact that these are browser games go?
I think people are still being kind of critical of them, but I think I agree with you in the notion that they are better and that they are pretty good in general. I mean, a lot of these games, you play them in the browser base, you go to a site and you log in, but you wouldn't really even know necessarily that you don't have a client that you're launching on, off your desktop. You play them in full screen, you just go at it, and you don't really know. It's maybe the graphics aren't exactly, perfect, the point where you need your $800 video card or whatever to render everything in perfect detail or whatever. But they're still pretty good, and they really have closed the gap between what we kind of think of from an old school, crappy looking browser game as opposed to a client launched game that you download everything on your computer and do. There really isn't that much of a difference anymore. It's just in terms of the gameplay itself, which a lot of people I think still associate browser game with, crappy, Facebook games or something like that.
I have a little sweet spot in my heart for browser-based games because I did play Neopets for so long.
Oh yeah, the Neopets addict over here.
And so I play Card Hunters now, and it kind of reminds me of Neopets. Just like seeing it in the browser, like feels very nostalgic.
But you can play like quote unquote real MMOs that feel like an actual game. I played a little Battlestar Galactica online when that was running. I played Free Realms, which it's fun to run around.
City of Steam is a good example.
City of Steam, okay, there. Yeah, I mean, again, you wouldn't recognize that these are browser based if you saw someone playing it on a computer nearby. You wouldn't just automatically go, well, that's a browser based game.
Yeah, I think really. People, when they think of a browser-based game, they either think of the graphics being subpar, or they think of the gameplay being subpar. That's a big thing. I think more so than ever now, gameplay is really what a lot of people are sort of being critical just out the gate about browser games, because they're thinking like, oh, if it's browser-based, it's not going to have the depth that all these other games have.
The reason for that is not so much because they can't make it that way. It's because it is in a browser, so it tends to be a little more accessible, maybe a little more casual. So
True.
That's why it is, not because the programmers are idiots or can't make it that way. It's because they choose not to, because they want to get that wider audience.
Well, there also are technical limitations, for example.
Oh yeah, to some extent, sure.
Yeah, like making an open world MMORPG is extremely difficult right now in a browser. If you want it to look somewhat nice, a lot of times they have to do a lot of instancing, and that's true for even City of Steam. There's a lot of instancing going on in that game, albeit to a lesser extent than you could realize. But there is still like limitations in that sense. But I sort of have this feeling that like a lot of developers now, like you mentioned Card Hunter, Squid, you're really enjoying that. A lot of people would write that off just because when they look at it and it's like it's 2D and there's not like a lot of animations, and it's kind of like people are sort of having this stigma against indie games, but free-to-play browser games that sort of try to do different things. I don't know.
Definitely, like browser-based games kind of have that indie stigma, like it's either gonna like suck really bad or it's gonna be like the gem among the garbage heap. But now it's kind of leveling out. Like everyone kind of seems to have like the same budget and kind of the same skills, and you definitely see a lot more gems coming out of the browser-based games now.
Yeah, I just would wish that people would not sell them short so much before actually trying them out. A prime example with Card Hunter is when I posted the first look, the first impressions. A lot of people were like, "Oh, this is browser based. Too bad it's browser based." That was one of the comments. I was like, "What do you mean it's too bad? So you're saying the game is good, but for the very fact that it's browser, you're not going to play it?" Like stuff like that was sort of like some of the common questions. But it is true that there are a lot of more people I think that are accepting browser games as a viable free-to-play platform and not something that just has gimmicky sort of Flash-based games. Nothing against Flash-based games. That was like how all free-to-play games worked in like their late 90s and early 2000s. Neopets. I don't know. Neopets was like sort of before Flash.
No, it used Flash.
It is. Oh, okay. So
Later.
Before it was like the static. Didn't the pages just refresh? I think that's how it worked.
Before there really wasn't any games.
Didn't you like battle the pets?
Yeah, you would battle the pets, and you can like find treasures and random things. And then they later implemented the game system where there'd be like mini games.
before I remember whenever I think the Neopets would battle, whenever you dealt damage to something, like the whole page would refresh.
Yeah, you'd have to refresh each time, yeah.
Yeah,
And on dial-up, that took, what, like 30 seconds?
It took forever. You're like, did I do damage to him? And then like 30 seconds later, you're like, ah! No. Yes.
And you'd have to hope you didn't disconnect during the battle or anything.
Oh,
You're like mom making a phone call, or...
You're like, Mom, get off the phone! But at that point, it was too late, because that's disconnecting of the call. Like, it's gone. It's over. All right, so in War, currently accepting closed beta signups. You can find more information about it on MMOBomb.com. But that is going to wrap up our news articles for this week. So why don't we go ahead and head on over to the weekly bombs. So the weekly bombs, I, of course, am going to start this week off. And I'm going to give a dub bomb to Rift. They added 2 20-man raids, a 5-man dungeon, and some other nice little goodies, including PvP ranking increases in gear, as well as new hairstyles, because who doesn't like new hairstyles in an MMO? Everybody loves their new version, the latest fashions, the latest hairstyles. That's kind of how it is in MMOs, I guess. Like every season there's like a new set of gear and a new hairstyle, and everybody walks around with that, and then everybody copies each other.
Do they make white outfits after Labor Day?
I don't know. We have to find out. What's an MMO that has white outfits? They don't have any white outfits. They just don't make white outfits at all.
Well, you can probably dye them.
You probably
Do they sell
could.
white dye after Labor Day?
White dye? I don't think that really exists. That's called bleach.
It's called bleach. White dye. Yeah, I should totally get a bleach like Clorox. Just like take off the outside and it'd be like white dye. And it's like, here, yeah, you just put it on any fabric and just dyes it white. Genius. Alright, I'm going to give a minor also to bomb to Tera, because they also added some in-game content for new dungeons, one of them being a 10-man raid, so a minor to bomb to you, Tera. Just take that and scamper away. Jason, what is your bomb, A-bomb?
I'm going to give a bomb to Rift for apparently being a great place to, or to Riot rather, yeah, for apparently being a really great place to work. If you looked at the article I wrote about Red 5 and their PV, they're getting rid of their PvP, I talked a little bit about a site called Glassdoor.com, which is a site where employees or former employees of companies can leave their input and can fill out like a 1 to 5 star rating for all sorts of things about a company. Red 5 didn't do very well, but I went and I looked at around 50 different video game companies, and the top one, in terms of ones that had like 5 or more votes, the top one was actually Valve. They averaged 4.4, but only on 5 votes. Number 2 on that list was Riot, which was 4.3, but was 74 votes. And they also had a 98% approval rating for their CEO on 62 votes.
Wow.
So, yeah, that was amazing. Nobody else had like even close to that much with a decent number of votes.
And that can be done anonymously.
Yes,
right?
It is pretty much anonymously. I think you don't have the option of leaving any other information. So, but yeah, it's always a cool place to read. Just go to Glassdoor.com. This is not a paid ad. They're not paying me or anything, and whatever. But yeah, you can go there and you can read it. Glassdoor.com. And you can go there and just type in a company in the field on top, and just look at it and read what actual people who have worked there have to say about it. Because a lot of people were saying all sorts of great things about Riot. So, looks like a really great place to be.
I need to see if there's one for MMOBomb now.
I looked. There is not.
I need to go make one for myself. MMOBomb is the best place to work. The CEO is so good. They create the best free-to-play content.
I may have left a comment and a rating on a former place I worked.
Really? Was it positive or negative?
I will not say.
I should totally go leave one on my past employers. That sounds like the best idea. All right. Squid. I've got things to say. Squid, what is your bomb, A-bomb?
My bomb would definitely have to go to Card Hunter, which has been sucking up all my time this past week and a half, I suppose. When did I start playing that?
It was the night before I did the free-to-play, or I keep saying free-to-play, the first impressions, which I think was Friday. Mm-hmm. So you started playing it Thursday night till 3 a.m. I fell asleep next to you while you were doing that. And then you played it Friday, and then you played it Saturday, and then you played it today. And you kind of just been playing it every day since I introduced you to it.
I'll have to give an A-bomb to myself for being so stupid and choosing an elf warrior in that game.
So for those of you who didn't watch the first impressions, elves are really fast, but they tank like crap. They're very bad at tanking. So she chose an elf warrior who's in melee range all the time.
My entire team is incredibly squishy, but somehow I'm still surviving. Barely.
Well, both of us are sort of going on. You have a elf warrior, a dwarf mage, and a human cleric. I have a human warrior, a human cleric, and an elf mage. And that setup seems to be working a little bit better for me. But we'll see. We're going to clash in PvP. Actually, we should totally do a PvP video. Me versus you. I think that would be quite epic.
Okay.
We never got to show off the PvP functions in the game. It's like the perfect opportunity. That's what we're going to do, guys, so stay tuned for that. It may actually get posted before this get posted. Who knows? All right, so that is going to be our weekly bombs for this week. Now, the member bombs here, we've got a couple to go through, just a couple. We want to start off with Adrian. He actually sent one in via email, gave me a nice little description. He said, I would actually like to give a bomb to Red 5 Studios for one of the latest fixes.
Was this before the
This was, I think, at the same time. Like,
okay.
I think it was like the next day after I posted it.
All right.
But it's a bomb for like a legitimate thing. He says a bunch of us with low specs had problems with the game after the Omnidyne update. For what I know, everyone that was using an ATI Radeon HD 5500 and lower, I myself had an ATI Radeon HD 3800, could not run the game anymore. The thing is that we were not supposed to run the game in the first place, being under the minimum requirements. I really thought that this will not be fixed, and I see no reason for them to fix it. Especially after the forum topic, where most of us posted was locked, I lost all hope. 1 month later, the impossible happened. They fixed the game for the people who are not supposed to run it. Of course, this won't last forever, since they do not test the updates on unsupported hardware. Sooner or later, they will give up on us. That's sort of like a little bit sad.
That's fatal.
He's like, he knows he's going to die. And he's like, sooner or later, we're going to, die is a little bit extreme. He knows bad things are going to happen. Nonetheless, Red 5 has my thanks and my admiration for going out of the way to bring this fix. I just guess it's time to upgrade my toaster. Toasters need loving at some point or another, You got to get that latest toaster that can fit 4 pieces of bread or 8 pieces of bread or whatever.
I have a 51-year-old toaster.
Wow. That's antique.
It was my parents' wedding present.
What? From who?
I don't know.
Themselves?
I should find that out.
Yeah.
No, they received it at their wedding.
It just appeared. Like no one set it down. It just like out of magic, this toaster was there. That's awesome. Well, congratulations for having such an old toaster. Maybe one day you can take it to the Antique Roadshow, and then you'd be like, this toaster is from 19 something something. This is a classic.
Been in my family for half a century.
Yeah, you just give it to. I would say give it to your kids, but you don't have any kids yet.
Work on that.
Yeah, keep us updated. All right.
Know anybody? Anyway.
Jason, why don't you go ahead and take the next one then?
Sure. This is from Rift Monkey. It says, I want to give a bomb to Slender. Slender the 8 Pages. I just discovered this game, and while simple in design, it gets under my skin the way Amnesia did. Now, I played Amnesia, and yeah, that can scare the crap out of you at times. Yeah, I beat it.
I only played, I think 20 minutes.
That was enough for you?
Both of us only played. Squid originally was skeptical about horror games actually scaring her, so I sat her down and what was it, 5 minutes? Maybe 5 minutes.
Oh, you didn't have me play Slender. Yeah, you had me play Amnesia.
Yeah, I had you play Amnesia. You watched me play Slender. In fact, you can watch me play Slender and some old videos on some of my side channels. Just search Spunkify Slender. You can find me screaming my face off.
I've heard Slender is worse than Amnesia.
It's because it's jump scares. That's the thing. It's not so much atmosphere as it is there's a guy right in front of you all of a sudden.
Amnesia's creepy. It just creeps you out, and you're like, I don't want to go down that hall. I don't want to go in that room. I just want to go outside where it's sunlight and stay away from all the darkness.
I loved any place where there was a window where I could look outside.
Yeah.
That's what I loved when I played Amnesia.
You're like, a window. I'm so happy.
Yes.
So nice. All right, and then Squid, why don't you take the last one from Air Splash?
Air Splash, A-bomb for Sega, because Phantasy Star 2 Online is taking forever.
Star Online 2.
Oh, Phantasy Star Online 2 is taking forever to come to Western players. It may be easier for me to learn Japanese and play it that way. America needs some robots. Is it robots?
There are robots in Phantasy Star Online 2. You did get that right. I'm impressed. Yeah, they kind of just dropped off the face of the earth. They were like, yeah, we're going to bring it to the NA, and then nothing.
Yeah, it was announced, says I'm looking at the site, officially announced July 9th, 2012, and was scheduled for 2013.
Yeah, that's going super well for them. It wasn't shown at all at PAX for anybody interested, so they still aren't talking about it at all. Well, the last week's question of the week was, have you ever been to an event dedicated to video games? What was it like? And that could include tournaments, LAN events, conventions, etc. Apparently,
and hepatitis.
And hepatitis, yes. Oh yeah, it did involve hepatitis. Handshakes, that's right. Apparently, all of you never go anywhere. You all stay inside of your houses, apparently watching MMOBomb or doing other things on the internet, because no one responded to that question ever. But
we don't want to know about the other things you do on the internet.
No. Oh.
No.
Nah. I considered it for a second. I considered it. What are you, the NSA? Is that what you are, Squid?
Yeah, perhaps.
You want to know what everybody does on the internet?
Yes.
Well, this week I have a new question, hopefully better answered by you guys. And that is, should developers make older free-to-play expansions free once new ones come out? So kind of what we talked about before, when a new expansion comes out, all the previous ones before that are free as a free-to-play. Would you feel that that is sort of like a nice meet-in-the-middle handshake? You know, would you play games like that if you could get into the game and not have to pay to get up to the current content? You just had to pay for the newest one, if you will, if you were jumping in. So let us know in the comments. And we will read your comments like always. Yeah. I totally blanked for a second. I didn't know what I was saying. I was like, let us know. And then I was like, what happens after this? That's going to be all for this week's Free-to-Play podcast. Kevin will be returning maybe. I don't know. Squid's working out pretty well. Let us know if you want Squid to return in the comments down below. +1, thumbs up, whatever. However you want to tell us. But Squid, it was quite a pleasure having you on here.
Thank you for having me here.
That's going to be all this week for the Free-to-Play podcast. I have been your host, Spunkify. Thanks to Jason and Squid for attending as our Free-to-Play co-host, our guinea pigs, if you will. They're always here to test and try new things and bounce my crazy ideas off of me, so we thank them for that. This is the point in the show where we ask everybody to please give us their usual form of social media contact. I'm not even going to bother with Squid, and neither should you, because she doesn't even have any social media.
Yeah, if you want to contact me, please encrypt your message and send it directly toward the Andromeda Galaxy.
By carrier pigeon.
By carrier pigeon. Just take a carrier pigeon, put it inside a rocket, send it encrypted into the Andromeda Galaxy. And somehow she'll pick it up.
Yeah, I'll get it. I'll get it somehow.
She'll get it, and the pigeon will still be alive. How does she does it? It's magic. Jason, you actually have something less mystical in ways for people to contact you. How would they do that?
And we thought Kevin was hard to get a hold of on Twitter.
I know, right?
I know. All right. Yes, I'm on the Twitter at WinterInformal. I also stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/JasonWinter.
Alrighty there. And of course, you can contact me at Spunkify on Twitter, or you just email me directly, michael@MMOBomb.com, like our previous guy did. What was his name? Adrian. Adrian, your name, it's just Adrian. It's not Rift Monkey or Air Splash, just Adrian. Props to you, man.
And it's not, ooh, Alchemist, ooh.
I know.
I gotta work him in every episode.
Ooh, we gotta do the fluctuations.
Ooh, Alchemist,
yes.
ooh.
Alrighty, guys. Until next time, this has been Spunkify in the game. We'll see you guys later. Spunkify out.